Anyone who comes to me and listens to me and obeys me is like someone who dug down deep and built a house on solid rock. When the flood came and the river rushed against the house, it was built so well that it didn't even shake. But anyone who hears what I say and doesn't obey me is like someone whose house wasn't built on solid rock. As soon as the river rushed against that house, it was smashed to pieces. When we moved to Banbridge, we looked at different houses. And I can remember on one day, we visited 2 identical houses. They had the same layout. They looked the same from outside. And if you closed your eyes and opened them, you wouldn't be able to tell which house you're in. From outside they looked the same, from inside they looked the same. The only difference was where they were built. These 2 houses had been built by the same developer. They'd used the same plans, the same designs, the same material. From outside they're identical. It was only when we looked and saw where it was that we noticed differences. And that's a little bit like the story we're looking at today. Jesus tells this story at the end of the Sermon on the Mount, and it's one of the most well-known parables. It's a story of a wise man who builds his house on solid rock. And in Matthew's version, he talks about the other one building it on sand. It's a story we know very well. Don't worry, I'm not going to sing the song. But that's why we know it. We know this story because we sing about it in Children's Sabbath School. Yet, I think these stories that we know so well often repay looking at again. Because sometimes we think we know what they're about. Sometimes we don't really pay attention to it. So join me today as we have a look at these 2 seemingly identical houses. And we ask, how deep is your foundation? Although this story is well known, I'm not sure we always get the meaning right. I can remember learning this in a Children's Sabbath School. We sang the song, the teacher had a felt board, and the teacher told us that the wise man was someone who put their faith in God, who was a Christian. And the foolish man who built his house on sand wasn't. And that foolish person was heading for destruction, just like the house built upon sand. Now, there's some truth to the idea that if we don't build our lives upon God, that ultimately our fate is in peril. But I don't think that's really the main point of this parable. You see, this parable is about 2 houses that appear identical. The only difference between them is below the surface, something you can't see. And I don't think here that Jesus is necessarily comparing Christians with non-Christians. He talks about those who hear him. So there's some kind of connection there. So basically, what he's doing here is he is contrasting 2 different kinds of professing Christians, not Christian and non-Christian. In fact, John Stott puts it this way. He says, both of them read the Bible, both go to church, both listen to sermons, both buy Christian books. The reason that you cannot tell the difference between them is that the difference is the deep foundations of their lives that are hidden from view. And I think, and this is what we're going to focus on today, that's the most important thing about this parable. This parable warns us that the most important thing about us, the thing that defines us, the thing that defines our life and our destiny, is hidden from the view of others. It can't be seen, it can't be praised, it's deeper than labels or affirmation. Therefore, if we live our lives simply for other people to praise us or to hold us up as examples or to look at us, then we run the risk of missing something. You see, if we care about what other people think and neglect what God thinks about us, then we could be building a beautiful looking house, but there'll be no foundations. And that error, Jesus tells us, will put us in great peril. He says that it is the secret things, the hidden things, the things below the surface. They are the reality upon which we construct our identity, our lives, and that matters most. The world might celebrate the grandeur of the house, but the Lord alone knows the quality of the foundations. This teaches us an important lesson not only about our own life and our own foundations, but it warns us about the dangers of comparing ourselves to other people. If you flick through my Instagram feed, you might think I was living the best life possible, but a filter will make anything look good. And that's what Jesus is talking about here. He's saying that even though the outside looks good, it's the foundations that matter. This is why we can't compare ourselves to other people, because we're only looking at the facade, the outside. We're not looking at the things that really matter. And so if I try and compare my life with someone, if I try and live my life the way they live their life, I could be making the biggest mistake by not concentrating on digging my foundations down. As we go through this parable together, we're going to see how important it is to concentrate not on the outside of that house, not on cleaning the windows, but on digging the foundation. When I was younger, I was dragged around castles and cathedrals and stately homes. We had a family subscription to the National Trust, and I was taken around more stately homes than you can imagine. And there's something about stately homes that draw people to them. We like to look at the grandeur. We like to look at the extravagance. We like to look at the beauty. And as we go through the dining rooms, we see the silverware, we see the crystal, we see the fine food. We go to the rooms and see the paintings, the lace, the tapestry. And we get to imagine what life would be like living in such luxury and grandeur. Now, if I'm honest with you, I don't really like that kind of thing. You see, it's probably because I realised that 150 years ago, I wouldn't be living in that part of the house. You see, there's another part of the house, a part you don't see straight away, and that's the kitchen down in the cellar. It's the servants' quarters in the attic. It's the parallel house full of workshops, full of activity, full of the servants and those in service doing everything so that the outside of the house looks nice. It's become a staple for television shows. I'm sure the older ones will remember Upstairs, Downstairs, and everyone else will remember Downton Abbey. There are two parts to this house. The good-looking, extravagant outside that the world sees, and then there's the behind the scenes, the downstairs bit, the bit that's full of hard work, long hours, the bit that really isn't so pleasant. Now, this sort of upstairs, downstairs, Downton Abbey-like story is actually not unlike this parable that Jesus tells. You see, his parable about houses and foundations at the end of a Sermon on the Mount emphasises that it's the unseen, buried part of the house that determines its strength. The house that can endure floods, the house that can endure storms, endures it because of the foundations, not because of the glamorous qualities above the surface. There have been quite a few recent studies that tell us that the church and Christianity is in difficulty. Increasing numbers of Christians are leaving, particularly young people, but it's not limited to them. They fall away from the faith. And I wonder if perhaps part of the problem is that church culture is focused on building impressive houses rather than strong foundations. See, life Upstairs is easy and it's fun. It's glamorous and it looks good. This is the life of exciting church activities and events. It's where hundreds or thousands gather together for worship, for concerts, dynamic, gifted preachers. Life downstairs is much more difficult and it's rarely praised. It's a life of prayer. It's a life of solitude, confession, discipline, hard work. It's where the house is truly maintained. To persevere in the Christian life, we must be willing to spend time in the servants' quarters, the cellars, the attic, where the real hard, unseen work takes place. It's the unseen and uncelebrated patterns of obedience. Maybe, as Christians, we've put too much of our energy into building the visible part of the building, and we've forgotten that it's the invisible, it's the unseen, it's the foundations that keep the building strong. So where would you rather be? In the drawing rooms, in the ballrooms, around the banquet table, or in the kitchen, the garage, the stable? Are you willing to put the hard work into digging those foundations? Does serving other people mean more to you than displaying this perfect exterior? This parable challenges us to ask ourselves, are we willing to live a downstairs hidden life? Or are we only doing this because we want our outside to be seen? What kind of life are you living? How are your foundations? It was a bit windy here last night. I've just come off of a Zoom meeting with some of my colleagues down in the south, and one of them wasn't sure he could make it because his internet connection had been knocked out with the storms and the trees and the lines. Jesus tells us in this parable that when the storms arrive, when the water comes up, when your windows rattle, that's when we discover the quality of the workmanship. No one wants a storm. No one wants their faith to be shaken. But when it comes, and it always does, that's what shows up the truth about ourselves and very often the false assumptions we've made to others. It's only when the rains come that we can see how well things have been built. This parable tells us that trials are divine diagnostic tests. They put stress on our lives and our faith, and it reveals our weakness. Once those weaknesses are exposed, then we are equipped and we have the knowledge we need in order to take corrective action. Just as when the wind comes up and the rain comes and we see a spot of damp or we get a crack somewhere, we go and we try and fix it. When we get the stresses and strains in our lives, when we see things aren't quite right, we know that we need to repent. We know that we need to rediscover God's grace and mercy. We need to renew our connection and communication with God. We need to connect with Him and dig those foundations. And that's why the New Testament repeatedly talks about trials and says that we should welcome them, we should be thankful for them. Because if we've obeyed the words of Jesus, we can welcome them without fear because they help us grow. I know that a lot of you, a lot of us, over the last few months have probably felt the stress test of trials. As we try and work out what this new normal means, where we deal with problems with lockdown, when we deal with problems and issues in our work, when we deal with all these things, there's been some storms in our lives. Maybe your windows are rattled a bit. Maybe we need to do a bit of work and fix that chimney. maybe this is an opportunity for us to take stock of the quality of the workmanship and the foundations in our lives. And if they're not as good as they should be, this is our opportunity to call in the master builder, Jesus. It's our opportunity to build on his foundation. It's our opportunity to put our house right. How are your foundations today? Do they need a builder to come in and shore them up? Scrolling through Facebook this week, I saw a friend post a video, and it shows that after the council's done some work outside their house, now, every time it rains, the water's run off and comes closer and closer to their house. I have another friend who lives in a part of the world where it's quite damp and wet, and their cellar room almost always floods, and they've got to keep a pump in there to keep it safe and dry. There are a lot of people who have to live with the anxiety of bad weather, flooding and problems. And that anxiety provides us with another insight into this parable that Jesus told about the wise and the foolish builders. You see, the wise builder, the one who built upon the solid rock, the one who had a good foundation, not only has a home that can withstand the storms, they also are able to have peace and tranquility. They possess the peace of mind that comes from knowing that their foundations are strong and nothing can harm it. They don't have to worry about the next rainstorm or the floods. They know they're secure. There's a peace, there's a tranquility, there's an assurance that you see in the lives of someone who has taken Jesus' words seriously, who believes in him and has allowed their lives to be built upon the foundation of him. They know that whatever may come, they will endure. Therefore, others might panic, but they display this peace that's beyond their understanding. The person who builds their house on sand or who doesn't build on the rock, though, well, they're going to be plagued by constant fear. They know that their house could fall at any time, any gust of wind or any cloud in the sky. There's a cloud out there, it's getting a bit dark, so I hope you can see this. But every time they see that, they're going to be worried. They're going to look at the horizon for potential threats every time. Now, this might explain something, because I know that there are some Christians who seem to be frightened all the time. They're worried, they're upset. They look at every newspaper headline, every court case, every world event, and they're worried that, this is a catastrophe, that their Christianity is going to be shaken, that the culture is against them. Well, I wonder, maybe that lack of peace comes because their lives are possibly built more on sand than the rock of Christ. Maybe they're worried because they haven't done as Jesus has commanded, and that facade of religious piety is about to be exposed when their foundations are put to the stress. The blessing of building your house on the rock of Jesus and obeying his commands isn't just revealed through that stress test of trials and tribulation, the storm, the wind and the rain. It's also revealed in the peace that you possess between the storms. It's a peace unattainable to others, no matter how clear the weather. Do you have that peace in your life? Does the certainty, does the security that your life is built upon his foundation give you the tranquility, the peace that passes understanding? If not, if it's something you want, call in the master builder and he will help you dig those foundations deep and strong, and you can live in his peace. It's a strange coincidence. Since I've started recording this, it's gotten darker outside. The rain is lashing down. The wind is blowing the trees. You can probably hear the wind in the chimney behind me. And it just reminds us that this story that Jesus told is a story that speaks to all of us. We've all felt in our lives that anxiety of looking at the horizon and seeing the wind and the rain. We all know and experience that stress test, that divine diagnostics when things don't quite go well. So today, as we take another look at this parable that we know so well, let's get beyond singing songs and nice actions and as enjoyable as we used to enjoy singing that song. And let's take a deep, hard look at our lives. What kind of houses are we building? Are our houses good looking? Do they look impressive? Are they beautiful? But what are the foundations like? Because a good looking house is worth nothing if it's built on the sand. Are you comparing yourself to someone else? Are you comparing yourself with someone without actually looking at the foundations? Because that's where it really counts. Jesus tells us the outward appearance is not the important thing. It's the foundation and connection with him. How's your foundation? Are you willing to put in the hard work? Are you willing to be found in the servants' quarters of life, building that relationship with God, strengthening your foundations? Are you willing to recognize that the outward could not exist without the inward, the unseen, the deep, the hard work? How are you handling the stresses and strains of life? Are they revealing cracks in the wall? Are they revealing problems? Don't worry about it. If they are, there's a builder who can fix it. Come to Jesus, repent, he will show you his grace and his mercy, and he will help you build your foundations upon him, the cornerstone. As you look to the future, do you have that peace that comes from knowing your house is secure? I praise God and give him thanks for all of you who can say yes. But if you want that security, if you want that peace, and you haven't got it yet, trust in the foundations that God can build in your life. They're secure and will stand all rain, all wind, all floods. So today, my question to you is the question that Jesus asked in this parable. How good are your foundations? May your foundations be strong. May you experience the master builder, Jesus Christ. May your lives be lives of service, life of dedication, life committed to digging those foundations in your life. May you withstand the rain. May you withstand the floods. May those foundations that Jesus built give you peace and security. And may one day you meet the master builder face to face. And may we enter into the house that he is building for us.